Undervalued and underestimated, yet in the end, humanity proved to be the key to saving the universe. The cold emptiness of space, vast and infinite, echoed the foreboding silence of a galaxy, teetering on the edge of a cosmic storm. Nadia stood at the observation deck of the time travel facility, her eyes fixed on the holographic display of a spiraling nebula. She had seen the patterns before, patterns that no one else had noticed. The anomaly was growing, and it was spreading faster than she had anticipated. Her fingers hovered over the console, tapping into the intergalactic network. The data pouring in was overwhelming, a series of irregular temporal fluctuations scattered across multiple realities. The universe was starting to fray at the seams, and Nadia knew that someone or something was manipulating time itself. But who and why? A voice broke her thoughts, cutting through the tension. "Nadia, we need to talk." It was Thorn. His presence was like a shadow, silent but imposing. She turned to face him, her expression hardening. Thorn was a warrior, a soldier trained to fight across time and space, but there was something different about him now. He had the look of a man burdened by knowledge he couldn't yet fully grasp. "What is it?" she asked, her voice steady, but carrying an edge of urgency. Thorn's gaze drifted to the holographic map on the screen. "The anomaly. It's not random. Someone's controlling it, and I think I know who." The words hung in the air, a terrible revelation that sent a chill down Nadia's spine. She had suspected something was wrong, but to hear it spoken aloud was another matter entirely. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of the implications. If Thorn was right, then the fabric of time itself was under attack. And if the enemy had the power to manipulate it, then the consequences could be catastrophic. "Who?" Nadia demanded, leaning forward. Thorn hesitated for a moment, and when he spoke again, his voice was grim. "The Council of the Void." The name struck Nadia like a blow. The Council was a secretive, shadowy organization with one goal: control. They were known for their mastery over temporal technology, their ability to move through time without leaving a trace. But until now, they had been nothing more than a rumor, a ghost story whispered among the galaxies. If they were behind this, it meant that everything Nadia had worked for, everything she believed in, was at risk. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing heart. "And what do they want with time?" Thorn turned his gaze away as if the answer was too painful to confront. "They want to rewrite it, to change history itself, and they found a way to do it." Nadia's mind snapped into focus. She had spent years studying the theoretical underpinnings of time travel, delving into the complexities of causality, paradoxes, and the very nature of reality. But this was something entirely different. The Council wasn't just altering events, they were planning to control the very flow of time, to reshape it in their image. "Where do we begin?" she asked, her voice low but determined. "We need to find Zorian." Thorn replied, his voice tinged with urgency. "He's the key." Zorian. The name carried with it an air of mystery and danger. Nadia had heard rumors about him, whispers from other timelines, warnings from those who had crossed paths with him, but she hadn't believed them, until now. If Zorian was truly the key, then they were dealing with something far more powerful than they had ever imagined. Nadia turned back to the console, her fingers flying over the controls. The data began to coalesce, a faint outline of Zorian's location emerging from the chaos. He was somewhere in the system, a human, but not like any human she had ever encountered. His blood contained a unique compound, a chemical structure that defied all known laws of biology. It was said that his blood had the power to heal, to restore, to even bend the fabric of time itself. But there was a cost. Zorian's blood was also highly volatile, dangerous to anyone who came into contact with it. And now it seemed the Council had discovered that power. "We have to move quickly," Nadia said, her voice sharper now. "The longer we wait, the more dangerous this becomes." Thorn nodded, already moving toward the exit. "I'll prepare the ship. You get the coordinates." Nadia didn't hesitate. She had spent years in the lab learning everything she could about the theoretical side of time travel. But now the real test is about to begin. They were stepping into a battle that would shape the future of the universe, and they couldn't afford to fail. As the doors to the facility slid open, Nadia's heart pounded in her chest. She had always known that time travel was a dangerous game, that the consequences of meddling with time could be catastrophic. But she had never imagined that it would come to this. that the very fabric of existence itself would be threatened. "Do you ever wonder," Thorne's voice called back, breaking her reverie, "if we're the ones who are being manipulated all along?" Nadia paused, considering his words. The idea was unsettling but not entirely unthinkable. In a universe where time could be bent and twisted, where nothing was certain, who was to say who was really in control? Were they the ones making the decisions, or were they just pawns in a game far beyond their understanding? "Maybe," she replied quietly, her mind racing. "But we can't let that stop us." They stepped onto the transport, the hum of the engines vibrating through the floor. As the doors closed behind them, Nadia took one last look at the facility. It was a place she had dedicated her life to, a place of knowledge and discovery. But now it was a tomb, a reminder that knowledge alone wasn't enough to protect them. The stakes had just grown too high. "Ready when you are," Thorne said, pulling her from her thoughts. Nadia nodded, her resolve hardening. The journey ahead would be long, fraught with danger and uncertainty. But she had no choice. They had to stop the council. They had to find Zorian before it was too late. As the ship soared into the unknown, Nadia felt a sense of dread settle in her stomach. The fabric of time was unraveling, and there was no telling how far the ripples would spread. The future was in flux, and she had no way of knowing what awaited them. But one thing was certain: if the council succeeded, the universe, as they knew it, would cease to exist. And that was a reality Nadia refused to accept. The ship's engines hummed in a steady rhythm as Nadia and Thorne descended deeper into the heart of the system. Outside the viewport, the stars blurred into streaks of light, a visual reminder of the velocity at which they were traveling. But the momentary distraction of the cosmic scenery did little to calm Nadia's racing thoughts. Zorian, the man whose blood could alter the very course of time. He was the only one who could stop the Council of the Void from bending the fabric of reality to their will. But the question that gnawed at her was why? Why did Zorian, a human, possess such power? What made him so different from all the others? Nadia turned to Thorne, who was seated at the controls, his gaze focused on the star maps ahead. There was a sense of unease in his posture. His muscles tensed as if he was preparing for something far worse than just a routine mission. "What do we know about Zorian?" she asked, her voice cutting through the hum of the ship. Thorne didn't immediately respond, his hand flexing on the control panel, as if weighing his next words carefully. "Not much," he said finally, his voice low. "He's special. There are legends about him, stories passed down through generations of time travelers. Some say he was born with the ability to perceive future events, visions, flashes of things to come. But the most terrifying part is his blood. They say it can heal wounds, regenerate tissue, even reverse the aging process. But when exposed to other species, it kills them." Nadia's brow furrowed. "Does it kill them?" Thorne nodded. "Yes, and that's why the Council is so interested in him. They want to harness his blood to manipulate time on a scale no one has ever seen before." Nadia felt a chill wash over her. The potential implications were terrifying. If the Council succeeded, they wouldn't just control time, they would control the entire universe, bending it to their will. Every event, every decision, every moment of history would be subject to their manipulation. And with Zorian at the center of it, it was only a matter of time before the universe itself became unrecognizable. "How do we find him?" she asked, her voice steady, despite the turmoil inside her. Thorne shifted in his seat, his eyes narrowing. "I've got a lead. We're heading to a planet called Phyros, a place where time anomalies have been reported. It's a desolate, forgotten world. No one goes there. But I've tracked a disturbance in the temporal field around it. If Zorian is anywhere, it's there." The ship began its descent, the planet's surface appearing on the monitor as a barren, cracked landscape. The atmosphere was thick with dust, and the distant horizon seemed to flicker in and out of focus, as if the planet itself were fighting against the natural flow of time. Nadia felt a pang of anxiety. Phyros was a place steeped in mystery, a world forgotten by most, but one that held secrets older than most civilizations could fathom. As the ship touched down on the cracked surface of Phyros, Nadia's heart quickened. She had been on many dangerous missions before, but this felt different. The weight of the task ahead bore down on her like a suffocating blanket. The fate of the universe, of all timelines, rested on their success. If they failed, the consequences would be unimaginable. The doors of the ship opened with a soft hiss, and Thorn was the first to step out onto the dusty terrain. Nadia followed her boots crunching against the dry ground. The air was thick, but it wasn't the heat that made it difficult to breathe. It was the oppressive sense of wrongness that seemed to cling to the very fabric of the planet. The land seemed to shift unnaturally, as if reality itself were slipping. "This is it," Thorn said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Something's here." Nadia scanned the horizon, her eyes narrowing. There was no sign of life, no movement, just the oppressive quiet of the world around them. She activated the sensor on her wrist, the device emitting a faint beep as it picked up a series of strange readings. "This doesn't make sense," she muttered. "The readings are off the charts. Whatever's happening here isn't just a temporal disturbance. It's something more." Thorn nodded, his hand moving to the weapon at his side. "We need to find Zorian quickly. If we're not careful, we could become part of whatever's warping this place." They began moving cautiously across the barren landscape, the air growing colder as they ventured deeper into the heart of the planet. Every step felt like it was leading them further away from reality, each shift in the atmosphere sending a ripple of unease through Nadia. There was something wrong about Firos, a dark, twisting presence that seemed to echo through the very ground beneath their feet. After what felt like hours of walking through the desolate landscape, they reached a cliff edge overlooking a massive, swirling vortex, a rift in space and time, rippling with raw, untamed energy. Nadia's heart skipped a beat. This was no ordinary temporal anomaly. This was something far more dangerous. "This is it," Thorn said, his voice full of dread. "This is where the Council is manipulating time. They've created a rift, something they can control, and Zorian is in the middle of it." Nadia stepped forward, her mind racing. The vortex before them was unlike anything she had ever seen. It wasn't just a tear in time, it was alive, pulsing with energy, a reflection of the Council's power. But Zorian wasn't here, not yet. The rift was growing, feeding off something, and Nadia knew that whatever it was, they had to stop it before it consumed everything. Suddenly, a low hum filled the air, vibrating the very ground beneath their feet. The rift expanded, and from within a figure emerged, cloaked in shadow yet unmistakably human. Zorian. But as he stepped closer, Nadia felt an icy dread seep into her bones. This wasn't the man she had imagined. He wasn't a savior. He wasn't a hero. He was something far more dangerous, something beyond her understanding. "Zorian," she whispered, her heart racing. The figure looked up, and for the first time their eyes locked. His gaze was not one of fear, not one of hope, but one of knowing. And in that moment, Nadia realized that the man standing before her was not the one she had come to find. He was the one who had come to find them. The wind howled through the barren cliffs of Firos, a harsh, unrelenting force that seemed to carry with it 1,000 whispered secrets. The vortex, still swirling ominously before them, cast strange shadows that danced across the cracked ground. Nadia could barely make out Zorian's figure, his presence unsettlingly calm despite the chaos around him. "Zorian," Nadia breathed, her voice trembling despite her best efforts. "We need you." "The Council, I know." Zorian interrupted, his voice low and deliberate. There was no emotion in it, no fear or urgency, just the calm certainty of someone who understood the full scope of what was at stake. "The Council has been searching for me, and they've found me." Nadia stepped forward, her heart pounding. "We've come to stop them, to close this rift before it's too late. You're the only one who can help us." Zorian's eyes, dark and unyielding, locked onto hers. His gaze was unsettling, as if he could see right through her to some deeper truth she hadn't even realized. He tilted his head slightly, a motion that felt almost too deliberate, like he was studying her. "I can't help you," Zorian said softly, his words carrying a weight that made Nadia's chest tighten. "You don't understand. This is beyond any of us." Thorn stepped forward, his expression hardening. "We don't have time for this," he snapped. "The Council won't wait. We need to shut this down now." Zorian turned his gaze to Thorn, the same unfeeling calm in his eyes. "You think the Council is the problem?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "The Council is a symptom. The true enemy is time itself." Nadia's brow furrowed in confusion. "What do you mean time is what they're manipulating? If we don't stop them, the Council is just the beginning." Zorian cut her off. They are trying to control the flow of time, but they do not understand what they are tampering with. Time is not something to be controlled. It's a force, a living thing, and they are about to wake it up. The words hung heavy in the air, and Nadia felt a chill run down her spine. She had always known that time travel was dangerous, that the potential for catastrophe was endless. But Zorian's words carried a new weight, a warning that had not fully registered until now. "Then what do we do?" Nadia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "How do we stop this?" Zorian took a slow, deliberate step forward, his eyes never leaving hers. "We won't stop it," he said, his tone flat. "We let it happen." The shock of his words hit Nadia like a physical blow. "What? No, we can't just let it happen. If we do, the council will let it happen." Zorian repeated, his voice steady, almost serene. "You don't understand, Nadia. You think the council wants to control time, but they don't even realize they are part of a larger game. The rift, the disturbances, it's all a test to see if humanity is worthy." Thorn's hand instinctively went to his weapon, his stance defensive. "Worthy? What are you talking about?" Zorian's expression softened almost imperceptibly as he turned toward the swirling vortex. "Time does not care about who we are or what we do. It is indifferent. But humans—" His voice trailed off, his gaze distant. "You are different. You are the only species that has the potential to reshape time itself." Nadia's mind raced as she tried to make sense of Zorian's words. She had always believed that humanity was just one species among many striving to survive and evolve. But Zorian spoke as if they were the key to something far grander, something tied to the very fabric of reality itself. "The council doesn't want to control time," Nadia. Zorian continued, his voice growing more intense. "They want to break it. They want to tear it apart so that they can remake the universe in their image. But they don't realize that time is a living, breathing entity. It has its own will, and it doesn't care about their plans. It will find a way to fight back." Thorn took a step closer, his voice filled with frustration. "And what are we supposed to do then? Stand by and let this rift consume everything?" Zorian turned his eyes back to Thorn, his gaze piercing. "The rift is not the enemy. The enemy is what comes after." Nadia felt a knot form in her stomach. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Zorian exhaled slowly, as if releasing a weight he had carried for far too long. "Once the rift is opened, time itself will begin to break. Reality will fracture, and new timelines will bleed into existence. The universe will be torn apart. But there's a twist. The human race, their blood, their essence can heal this. Only humans have the ability to bridge these fractures, to repair the tear." Nadia blinked, stunned by the weight of his words. "So, we're the cure?" Zorian nodded, his eyes dark, with an unsettling mixture of sorrow and knowing. "You don't understand what that means. The blood of a human is unique. It holds the essence of survival, of adaptation. It's the one constant in a universe of chaos. You're the only species capable of saving or destroying everything." Thorn's eyes narrowed. "So you're telling me that humanity is the key to either the salvation or the destruction of the universe? That's a lot of pressure." "It's not pressure," Zorian said softly, his voice almost regretful. "It's destiny." Nadia's mind raced as she processed the magnitude of what Zorian had just revealed. Her entire life had been dedicated to studying the mechanics of time, of reality, but never had she imagined something so profound. The future of the universe, the very fabric of existence, hinged on humanity's ability to understand and harness the power of their own blood. "Then we have to stop the council before it's too late," Nadia said firmly, the weight of her words settling in. Zorian didn't respond immediately. He stared into the vortex, his expression unreadable. "It may already be too late." The air around them seemed to tremble, the ground vibrating slightly beneath their feet. Nadia felt a shift in the atmosphere, a subtle change in the flow of time itself. The rift was growing. The universe was on the verge of unraveling. "We're running out of time," Thorn said, his voice tight with urgency. Zorian's gaze slowly turned back to them, his eyes filled with a deep sadness. "You don't understand. Time will unravel, and when it does, everything will change, whether you are ready or not." As the wind howled around them, the rift's pulse grew stronger, its dark tendrils reaching out like the fingers of an unseen hand. Time was indeed running out, and the choices they would soon face could change the course of existence itself. The journey to Nadir felt like a long and uncertain passage, one marked by the crushing silence of space and the endless expanse of stars. Nadia sat in the cockpit, her fingers dancing over the holographic controls, while Thorn stood behind her, his gaze fixed on the distant destination. The city of Nadir, a hub for the most brilliant minds in time travel technology, was their next stop. The city itself, floating above the vast, churning ocean of the planet below, was a marvel of engineering built as a place where science could evolve without the constraints of planetary limitations. It was the perfect place to uncover answers about the disturbances in the fabric of time. "We need more information about Zorian," Nadia muttered to herself, her voice barely above a whisper. "The Council's playing a long game, and we're still not sure where we fit into it. But Nadir, maybe there are answers there." Thorne, sensing the weight of her words, leaned over her shoulder and studied the monitor. "It's our best chance," he said. "The scientists there have been studying time anomalies for decades. If anyone knows how to fight this, it's them." Nadia nodded, but the unease in her chest wouldn't fade. Every new piece of information about Zorian seemed to only raise more questions. She glanced over at Thorne, whose usual stoic expression was tinged with something darker today. He knew just as she did that the consequences of failure were unimaginable. Not only would the rift tear apart the fabric of time itself, but the Council was likely already preparing to seize control. If Zorian was truly humanity's last hope, then the task was clear: find him, unlock his potential, and stop the Council from manipulating time. But time was a fickle thing, and it was no longer on their side. The ship descended through the atmosphere of the planet, approaching the floating city. Nadir was a sight to behold, a sprawling metropolis suspended in the sky, connected by shimmering bridges and radiant lights. Beneath its gleaming exterior, however, the city was a labyrinth of secrets with dark corners, where knowledge was bartered like precious currency. It was a place where time and reality bled together, where the very laws of physics bent and twisted. But in all its grandeur, the city was also home to a deep hidden unease. Something about it felt wrong, as if the weight of the universe itself bore down upon its streets. As the ship landed and the hatch hissed open, the fresh air hit them with a mixture of ionized particles and the faint scent of salt water from the distant ocean. The contrast between the sterile, metallic interior of the ship and the organic, almost alive atmosphere of the city was jarring. Nadia and Thorne stepped out into the docking bay, where a group of scientists and security personnel were waiting. Their faces were all familiar members of the research collective that had long been at the forefront of time travel advancements. But the moment Nadia set foot on the ground, something felt off. The usual air of polite curiosity that these scholars exuded was absent. Instead, there was an unmistakable tension in the air, a sense that something had shifted. "Professor Velos." Thorne greeted one of the senior scientists. Velos, an older man with a sharp, calculating expression, stepped forward to meet them. "Thorne, Nadia," Velos said with a curt nod. "We've been expecting you, but it's not a visit I would have wanted. The situation is more dire than we anticipated." Nadia didn't waste time with pleasantries. "What's going on? What have you found?" Velos's eyes flickered nervously, and he motioned for them to follow him. "Follow me. I'll explain everything inside." As they walked through the maze of corridors, Nadia felt the unease grow. The walls, lined with endless rows of data consoles and holographic projections, seemed to close in around them. The scientists moved quickly, exchanging whispers, and Nadia couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. It wasn't just paranoia, it was the sensation of something more sinister lingering just beyond their perception. When they reached the central research room, Velos turned to face them, his expression grave. "We've been studying the temporal anomalies caused by the rift, but what we've discovered—" He paused, clearly reluctant to continue. "What is it?" Nadia pressed her voice sharp. "The rift is growing, yes, but there's more. We've traced it back to an unknown source, a source that is not just affecting time but space as well. It's like the rift is trying to collapse everything into itself." Thorne frowned. "So the rift isn't just opening, it's pulling everything into it." Velos nodded grimly. "Exactly. And the most troubling part, The signatures of the council are all over this. Nadia's blood ran cold. You're saying they're already manipulating it? Velos's eyes darkened. Not just manipulating it, they're accelerating it. The rift is growing faster than we thought. We thought we had time, but now, I'm not sure we do. Before Nadia could respond, the lights in the research room flickered and the sound of an alarm began blaring through the hallways. Panic spread through the facility like wildfire. What's happening? Nadia demanded. A voice crackled over the intercom. Unauthorized entry detected in the lower levels. Intruder alert, all personnel evacuate immediately. Thorne's hand instinctively went to his sidearm. This is bad. We have to go, Velos said urgently. There's no time to explain. The intruders are after the core of our research. They want to control the rift. We need to stop them. Nadia exchanged a glance with Thorne, who nodded. Lead the way. Doctor. Velos turned and sprinted toward the nearest exit, with Nadia and Thorne close behind. They navigated through the labyrinthine corridors, their footsteps echoing off the cold metallic walls. The tension in the air was palpable, and Nadia's mind raced. Who could be infiltrating Nadir? And why now, when they were so close to uncovering the truth, they reached the lower levels of the facility, where the hum of machinery was deafening? The security door at the end of the corridor had been torn open, and the room beyond was in disarray. It was clear that whoever had entered had done so with force. Velos skidded to a stop at the threshold of the room. No, he whispered, his face pale. Nadia and Thorne followed his gaze, and what they saw made their blood run cold. Standing in the center of the room, silhouetted by the flickering lights, were several figures, alien beings, their forms shifting and undulating as though they were not entirely solid. They were members of the Zoros, a dangerous alien faction known for their ability to traverse between different realities. Their presence here meant one thing the Council had sent them. Thorne raised his weapon, stepping in front of Nadia. Get back now. The leader of the Zoros stepped forward, its translucent form flickering in and out of existence. You're too late, it said, its voice a dissonant hum like the merging of countless tones. The rift has already begun. The Council will not be stopped. Nadia's heart pounded in her chest. This was the moment they had feared. The Council was already here, and with the Zoros on their side, it would only be a matter of time before they lost control of the situation entirely. We will see about that, Nadia said, her voice steady as she prepared for what was coming next. The room was thick with tension as the Zoros stepped closer, their otherworldly forms shimmering in and out of focus. Thorne's gun was aimed directly at the leader, his stance solid and unyielding. Nadia's mind raced, but she didn't make a move just yet. She knew that in this situation, speed could be the difference between life and death. The leader of the Zoros tilted its head as if amused by Thorne's defiance. Do you truly think you can stop us? It asked, its voice a cacophony of shifting frequencies. The fabric of time is already unraveling. There is nothing you can do to prevent what is coming. Nadia clenched her fists. We'll see about that, she muttered under her breath, her eyes scanning the room for any possible escape routes. They were cornered, outnumbered, and facing an enemy who could manipulate time itself. But she wasn't about to back down. Not now. Not when the future of the universe was at stake. Then, just as the situation seemed to reach its boiling point, a sharp crack of energy sliced through the air. A burst of bright blue light exploded into the room, throwing the Zoros off balance. Nadia's eyes widened as a tall figure materialized through the distortion, a man dressed in dark tactical armor with a rifle slung across his back. His piercing blue eyes scanned the room, locking onto the Zoros leader before settling on Nadia and Thorne. Move! The man commanded, his voice cold and detached. The Zoros recoiled slightly, their shimmering forms flickering as if uncertain of the newcomer's origin. The man didn't hesitate, moving with the precision of a predator. He took a step forward, and before anyone could react, he leveled his rifle at the Zoros leader. Stay back, he ordered, his gaze unflinching. You're not the only ones with tricks up your sleeves. Nadia's heart skipped a beat. Who the hell are you? She demanded, her voice filled with both confusion and caution. The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he fired a shot, a concentrated pulse of energy, straight at the Zoros leader. The energy blast struck with a resounding crash, sending the alien leader stumbling backward. The rest of the Zoros shifted clearly, shaken by the attack. Who I am doesn't matter, the man finally said, his voice calm, almost casual. What matters is that I'm not here to let you die today. Thorn, still on alert, didn't lower his weapon. And why should we trust you? He asked, his voice tinged with suspicion. The man shrugged nonchalantly. Because he said, pausing for effect, the council sent me to kill you. But I think I might change sides. Nadia's eyes narrowed. You're a bounty hunter. Not just any bounty hunter, the man replied with a smirk. I'm Cade, a time hunter, if you will. And let's just say, I don't like working for the wrong side. The air between them crackled with uncertainty. Nadia could feel the weight of the decision hanging in the balance. Cade was a time hunter, someone who specialized in hunting targets across different timelines. It was no surprise he was armed to the teeth, ready to kill on command. But now he was claiming to have switched allegiances. Why the change of heart? Nadia asked, stepping closer, though her hand remained near her own weapon. Cade's eyes met hers, his expression unreadable. Simple, he said, his voice hardening. The council's going to burn the universe down to reshape it, and I'm not in the business of watching history get rewritten for someone else's gain. It's not the timeline I signed up for. Before Nadia or Thorn could respond, the Zeros leader recovered its form, shifting as it realigned itself with the group. Its voice, distorted but powerful, filled the room again. You think you can stop us? You, the human, the traitor, and the powerless. The leader's form flickered, creating an unsettling dissonance. Time is ours to control. You will all be consumed by it. With a sudden motion, Cade raised his rifle again, his expression focused. Not today, he said simply, firing another blast, this time directed at the group of Zaros. The shot struck one of the figures in the chest, sending it crashing backward, its form disintegrating into a blur of light. Nadia was stunned. This wasn't just a bounty hunter. This was someone who knew how to manipulate time itself. The technology he carried was far beyond what she'd seen before. The implications were staggering. All right, Thorn said, lowering his weapon for a moment. I think we can call this an uneasy truce. Nadia nodded, her mind still racing. Fine, but we're not out of this yet. The rift's still out there, and the council is likely already preparing for the next phase. Cade glanced at her, his eyes still cold, but with a hint of something deeper. I didn't come here for a truce, he said, his voice low. I came here to stop the council, and I don't care how we do it. The Zaros, now disoriented by the attack, began regrouping. The leader hissed in a low, guttural tone. You cannot stop the inevitable, it spat. Time is beyond your control. Cade turned, addressing Nadia and Thorn. We don't have much time. We need to hit them where it hurts, at the source of the rift. The council's planning something catastrophic, something that will tear apart all timelines. If we're going to stop this, we need to get to the heart of their operation. Nadia, feeling the gravity of his words, nodded. Then let's move. We've been playing catch-up this whole time. It's about time we take the fight to them. Cade turned to face her fully, now a smirk playing at the corners of his lips. I like you, he said. You've got guts. Let's see if that's enough to get us through this mess. As the tension in the room began to shift from hostility to an uneasy alliance, Nadia couldn't help but feel the weight of the choice they had just made. Cade was a wild card, a dangerous one. But in this fight, they needed all the help they could get. They would face whatever the council threw at them together, whether they liked it or not. We move out now, Cade said, his voice sharp and commanding. The rift is waiting. With that, the three of them turned to face the door, the Zaros leader's threatening hiss echoing in their ears as they made their way deeper into the heart of the city. The enemy was closing in, and their fight had only just begun. The corridors of Nadia's underground research facility were eerily quiet as Nadia, Thorn, and Cade moved swiftly through the dimly lit passageways. The tension between them had settled into a rhythm and unspoken understanding that for now they were allies, untrusting allies, but allies nonetheless. The walls hummed with the sound of distant machinery, but the unease in Nadia's chest remained. They were walking into a storm, and they had no idea what awaited them. Cade led the way, his eyes scanning the shadows, his every movement sharp and deliberate. Nadia kept pace with him, while Thorn flanked them from behind, ever vigilant. Their path led them deeper into the heart of Nadir, towards a hidden sector that housed the most sensitive research into time manipulation. It was here in the bowels of the facility that they hoped to find the answers they desperately needed about the rift. As they approached the main lab, the door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing an expansive chamber filled with glowing consoles and intricate data streams. But something was off. The lights flickered briefly, and the temperature seemed to drop several degrees. Nadia's instincts flared, and she stepped forward cautiously, eyes narrowing as she surveyed the room. Suddenly, the air in front of them rippled like a heat wave, and a figure materialized out of thin air cloaked in shadows, her silhouette barely distinguishable from the darkened corners of the room. She was tall, her movements fluid, almost graceful, as if she was untethered to the world around her. The temperature seemed to plummet further as her presence settled in a palpable coldness that seemed to pierce through the very air. Nadia's breath caught in her throat. Ilara. The woman before them smiled, though it was more of a smirk than a true expression of joy. Her eyes gleamed cold and calculating, with an ancient knowing look that sent a shiver down Nadia's spine. "So we meet at last," Ilara said, her voice a smooth melodic whisper that seemed to echo through the room, sending ripples through the air. "I must say I'm impressed. You've made it farther than most would have." Thorn's hand went instinctively to his weapon, but Nadia stopped him with a glance. Ilara wasn't just a mere figure of shadow. She was a force in her own right, a time manipulator, a being who could control the very flow of temporal energy. If they were to survive this, they had to tread carefully. "Ilara, what is this?" Nadia demanded, her voice sharp with both confusion and anger. "What do you want with the rift? Why are you helping the council?" Ilara chuckled, her laugh soft, almost musical. "Ah, my dear Nadia, I'm not helping the council. I am the one who has been orchestrating everything. The council is merely a pawn in a much larger game, my game." The words hit Nadia like a physical blow. She could feel the weight of Ilara's presence press in on her, the dark energy that seemed to swirl around the woman like a cloak. She was not merely a time traveler or manipulator. She was something far older, far more dangerous, someone who had seen the threads of time unravel and had decided to weave them into her own image. "You're the mastermind behind this," Thorn muttered under his breath, the realization dawning on him. Ilara smiled, her lips curling into a cold, predatory grin. "Yes, it was always me, Thorn, from the very beginning. You see the rift, the temporal anomalies, they are the key to rewriting the universe as it was meant to be. A universe free from the chaos of time, free from the limitations of reality. I plan to remake everything." Nadia's mind raced as she tried to piece together what Ilara was saying. Remake everything. You want to control time itself. You can't just rewrite the universe. Time doesn't work that way. Ilara's gaze flickered with amusement, as if Nadia's words were nothing more than a child's protest. "Oh, but I can. Time, you see, is not the unyielding force you believe it to be. It is malleable, a living thing, waiting for the right hands to shape it. And those hands, my dear, are mine." She took a step closer, her form seemingly fading in and out of existence, as if she were nothing more than a mirage, a being between worlds. "The council is nothing but a tool," Ilara continued, "a means to an end. They believe they are in control, but I have been the one pulling the strings all along. Their interference, their attempts to accelerate the rift, it is exactly what I needed to unlock its true power." Nadia felt a surge of anger rise within her. "You're going to destroy everything. You're going to break time, and for what? To create a world where you have absolute control over everything?" Her voice was thick with disbelief and rage. "That's madness." Ilara's eyes glinted darkly. "No, Nadia. It's not madness. It's inevitable. Time is a force that no one should control, not the council, not anyone. But I understand it. I've seen its patterns, its flaws, and I am the only one who can correct them." The room seemed to darken further as her presence swelled. The air around them pulsed with dark energy, and Nadia could feel the very fabric of reality beginning to stretch. Time was warping, bending to Ilara's will. She was pushing the limits of what should be possible, using the rift as a conduit to reshape the universe. "You think you can stop me?" Ilara asked, her voice now carrying a dangerous edge. "The rift is already beginning. It will collapse the timelines, destroy everything that has come before. And in the chaos, I will rebuild it, one reality at a time." Thorn's hand twitched on his weapon. "We won't let you do that," he growled. "You don't control anything. Ilara's lips curled upward in a smile that was equal parts amusement and disdain. Oh, Thorn. You think you can stop me? You think that by pulling your little triggers, you can fight fate? She raised a hand, and the air around them seemed to freeze. You are nothing compared to the power of time itself, and the sooner you accept that, the better. With a snap of her fingers, the entire room seemed to shudder. Time warped around them, seconds stretched into eternity, and the edges of reality began to blur. Nadia felt her body falter, as if she were being pulled in 1,000 directions at once. The world around them flickered like a broken hologram, but then just as suddenly as it had begun, the distortion stopped. The room returned to its eerie stillness. Nadia's heart pounded in her chest as she struggled to regain her bearings. Ilara's power was unlike anything she had ever encountered. "We'll stop you," Nadia said, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. "You may have the rift, but we have something you don't understand." Ilara's smirk widened. "And what is that exactly?" Nadia met her gaze, her resolve hardening. "Hope. You can manipulate time, but you can't control humanity. We will stop you whatever it takes." Ilara's eyes flashed with something dangerous, something almost predatory. "We'll see about that," she whispered before she vanished into thin air, leaving only the echo of her laugh hanging in the room. The silence that followed was deafening. Nadia, Thorn, and Cade stood there, their breaths shallow, knowing the fight had only just begun. The clock was ticking, and the rift was expanding. The council had been a distraction. Ilara, the true architect of this destruction, was now fully in control, and time itself was her weapon. The air was thick with the taste of salt and metal as the trio raced down the darkened corridors of Nadir's research facility. Their footsteps echoed through the sterile hallways, but Nadia's mind was miles ahead, already visualizing the unfolding events. They had no choice now but to abandon Nadir, to leave the heart of the facility, and plunge headfirst into the chaotic unknown of the timelines. Ilara had made her move, and now they had to find a way to stop her, a woman who wielded the power of time itself. But how? How could they possibly face a being who had already bent reality to her will? Nadia's fingers clenched around her weapon, but she knew that guns and brute force wouldn't be enough this time. Time itself was the battlefield, and they were nothing but players caught in a game far bigger than they had ever imagined. "We need to move fast," Thorn grunted as they reached the docking bay. His eyes were sharp-focused. The urgency in his voice was impossible to ignore. "The longer we stay here, the more likely Ilara is to track us down." Nadia nodded, her breath steady, despite the chaos that surrounded them. The only way to lose her is to outpace her through time itself. Cade, who had been eerily quiet up until now, suddenly spoke up. "You mean time travel? That's a one-way ticket to more trouble than you can handle." Nadia glanced at him, her mind working rapidly. "We don't have a choice. We need to get ahead of her. If she's controlling the rift, then she'll use it to follow us. But if we jump through multiple timelines, if we move quickly enough, maybe we can buy some time. And find Zorian." Cade's eyes narrowed. He was about to argue, but then he saw the look on Nadia's face, the unwavering determination that had driven her since the first moment they'd met. She wasn't going to back down. "Fine," he muttered, turning toward the controls. "But this is on you. If we get stuck in some alternate timeline and never make it back, don't say I didn't warn you." Nadia stepped forward, her voice low but resolute. "We won't get stuck. Not if we keep moving." Thorn was already at the helm, his fingers moving with precision over the controls. The engine roared to life, the hum of the ship filling the room as the lights above flickered briefly. A shimmering portal appeared before them, a swirling vortex that beckoned them forward. The timeline they were about to enter was unpredictable, dangerous, unlike anything they had encountered before. But it was the only option left. "We'll go through the first breach," Thorn said, his voice steady despite the weight of the situation. "Once we're through, we split up and hit different periods. Meet back in 12 hours standard time. Don't get caught in any paradoxes." Nadia nodded, but there was a fleeting moment of doubt in her mind. Could they really outrun Ilara? Was jumping through timelines even the right strategy? She didn't have time to think about it. Ilara's influence over the rift was growing, and with each passing second, the universe was bending further out of shape. Initiating jump. Thorne said, pulling the lever. The ship lurched forward and the swirling vortex engulfed them, pulling them into the chaotic folds of time. The first jump was like diving into an abyss. Nadia felt the very fabric of reality stretch, and for a split second she wasn't sure if she had made it through. Time folded, space distorted, and every second felt like an eternity. But then the ship steadied, and the disorienting pull released its hold. They had arrived. The world outside was alien. The stars overhead were not the same as those in their own timeline. The atmosphere, the colors, even the landscape, they were all different. It was as if they had entered a parallel universe where nothing they knew was quite the same. "This isn't where we need to be," Cade said, his voice tense as he peered out at the unfamiliar terrain. "This timeline's off." "I know," Nadia said, her eyes scanning the unfamiliar world. "We just need to keep moving." Without hesitation, Thorne activated the ship's systems again, preparing for the next jump. But before he could do anything, a sudden screech pierced the air, a sharp, inhuman sound that vibrated through the hull. Nadia's stomach dropped. "What was that?" Thorne demanded, gripping the controls. Cade's eyes widened as he turned to face the others. "Something's following us," he said, his voice tight. "Something bad." Nadia quickly glanced at the timeline readings. The rift they had just passed through was unstable, its pulse erratic and unpredictable. But there was something worse. Another ship had entered their space, and its readings were off the charts. Something had followed them through the breach. "Ilara." "We need to get out of here now," Nadia said urgently. "Thorne, take us to the next jump. We can't stay here." Thorne didn't need to be told twice. His hands moved quickly over the controls as the ship's engines powered up once again. The alien world outside began to blur as they prepared for the next jump. But as they neared the breach, the ship jolted violently. The lights flickered and the ship's warning systems blared. They were being pulled, dragged back into the vortex. Something was interfering with their escape. Nadia's heart pounded in her chest as she gripped the seat. The turbulence intensified. "What's happening?" Cade shouted, trying to steady himself against the shaking vessel. Nadia's eyes flew to the controls, her mind racing. "The rift is collapsing. It's pulling us in." Thorne cursed under his breath, desperately working the controls, but the ship's systems were malfunctioning. The fabric of time itself was unraveling, and they were caught in the storm. Suddenly, the ship lurched forward, and Nadia felt a momentary sense of weightlessness before they were flung violently into another timeline. When the world stabilized, Nadia could feel the change immediately. The ship was hovering above a battlefield, the sky red and thick with smoke. The air was heavy with the scent of sulfur and ash. Below them, an ancient city lay in ruins, its once grand building now smoldering ruins. "We've jumped too far," Nadia muttered, feeling the heavy weight of history pressing down on her. They were in the midst of a long-forgotten war, a timeline where the fate of a forgotten civilization was being decided in flames. But there was no time to waste. Ilara was still hunting them. They had to keep moving through the chaos of time, through the endless possibilities. Every jump, every leap took them farther from their home and closer to the final confrontation. If they couldn't find a way to stop her, they would be lost to the currents of time forever. "We need to get to Zorian." Nadia said, her voice firm. "This war, this timeline, it's not our fight. We have to keep moving." Cade gave her a sharp look but nodded. "Lead the way." Thorne pressed a final set of commands into the ship's systems. The engines roared and the ship began to lift, the landscape blurring beneath them. The chase was on, and no matter how many times they leapt through time, Ilara would be right behind them, her influence ever expanding, threatening to engulf them all. They had to find Zorian, and fast. The ship descended rapidly through the folds of time, shuddering as they navigated the chaotic vortex of distorted realities. Nadia's heart raced in her chest, her mind focused on the mission at hand. They had just escaped Ilara's immediate grasp, but they couldn't afford to relax, not for a second. The rift was still open, still pulling at the very fabric of existence, and Ilara was out there waiting for the perfect moment to strike. "Where are we now?" Cade asked, his voice a mix of curiosity and wariness. Nadia glanced at the readings on the console, her eyes narrowing. "We're on a trajectory towards the temporal research complex," she said. "It's a secret facility where some of the most advanced time travel experiments were conducted. If there's any chance we can find answers, it's there." Thorne's eyes narrowed as the massive complex came into view. The station appeared out of nowhere, as if it had materialized out of the ether. Floating in space surrounded by an intricate web of energy fields, the temporal research complex looked like something from a distant future, gleaming almost pristine, but filled with an eerie sense of foreboding. Its massive spires reached into the void, a testament to the sheer power of the technology housed within. "We need to get in and get out quickly," Thorne muttered. "We don't know how much time we have before Alara sends her forces after us." Nadia nodded. "Agreed. The research conducted here could hold the key to understanding how we can stop the rift, but we need to move fast." As they approached the complex, the ship's communication systems crackled to life. A voice cold and metallic echoed through the speakers. "Unauthorized entry detected. Initiating lockdown protocols. All incoming vessels will be neutralized." Before anyone could react, the ship jolted violently, and a series of automated turrets emerged from the complex's outer hull. Streams of energy fire erupted, tearing through the blackness of space toward their ship. Nadia's heart skipped a beat. "Brace for impact!" Thorne shouted, his hands moving swiftly over the controls, trying to maneuver the ship out of the line of fire. The ship rocked with each blast, but Thorne's skill kept them steady, narrowly avoiding a direct hit. Nadia gripped the edge of her seat, feeling the tension surge in her chest. They couldn't afford to take any more hits. "We need to disable those turrets," Cade said, his voice calm despite the situation. "I'll handle that." Before anyone could stop him, Cade was already out of his seat, moving toward the rear of the ship where the weapon systems were housed. Nadia and Thorne exchanged a brief glance but didn't have time to argue. Cade was a wild card, but he knew how to get things done. "I'm going in," Cade called back over his shoulder as he suited up for the mission. "I'll take care of those turrets. You two get to the research facility." Without waiting for a response, Cade was gone, moving swiftly toward the rear airlock. Nadia and Thorne exchanged a brief nod before they turned their attention back to the mission at hand. "We don't have much time," Nadia said, her voice steady. "We need to get inside before Alara's forces close in on us." Thorne gave her a quick nod, and together they made their way toward the docking bay. The sound of Cade's movements could be heard as he prepared for his assault, but their focus remained on the task before them. As they entered the facility, the heavy metallic doors slid open with a hiss, revealing the interior of the temporal research complex. The air was sterile, the atmosphere filled with the hum of machinery and the faint glow of neon lights. Nadia's eyes scanned the area quickly. It was an advanced research facility filled with technology that bent the very laws of physics. They were close to the heart of the rift, and she could feel it, the power that pulsed beneath their feet, beneath the very structure they walked on. "Where do we start?" Thorne asked, his voice low but urgent. Nadia's gaze flickered to a set of control panels at the far end of the room. The panels were ancient by modern standards, but their systems were still functional. "Over there," she said. "If we can access the central console, we might be able to find out how to stop the rift from collapsing." As they approached the console, the door behind them slammed shut, trapping them inside. The sound of footsteps echoed from the shadows, followed by the unmistakable hiss of a weapon being drawn. "Did you really think you could just walk in here and control time?" a voice sneered. Nadia spun around, her heart racing. Standing in the doorway, cloaked in dark armor, were Alara's enforcers, figures from another timeline. Beings who had been twisted and contorted by the very fabric of time itself. They were powerful, relentless, and utterly loyal to Alara. "We don't have time for this," Thorne said, stepping forward, his weapon drawn. "Move or we'll make you move." The enforcers didn't respond. They raised their weapons in unison, their eyes glowing with an unnatural light. Before any shots were fired, a new presence filled the room, one that sent a shockwave through the facility. Zorian appeared, standing at the far side of the room. His presence seemed to distort the air around him, the very walls trembling at the power that emanated from him. For a brief moment, the enforcers faltered their attention, shifting from Nadia and Thorne to the newcomer. Zorian stepped forward, his gaze fixed on the enforcers. "You're too late," he said, his voice calm, but carrying an undeniable weight. "This time it's my turn." The enforcers recoiled as if repelled by an unseen force, their weapons wavering in their hands. Zorian's blood, his power, was beginning to surface in a way none of them could have anticipated. His ability to manipulate time was not just a weapon. It was a force of nature, one that had now fully awakened. Nadia watched in awe as Zorian extended his hand, a subtle motion that seemed to ripple through the very fabric of time itself. The air shimmered, bending and twisting, and the enforcers were suddenly frozen in place, their bodies suspended in time. It was as though they had been turned to stone, caught in a moment they couldn't escape. Zorian turned to Nadia and Thorn, his eyes filled with a deep understanding. "I see now," he said, his voice quieter than before. "My blood, my power, this is the key. I can control time, but I need to focus. I can stop the rift, but it will take everything I have." Nadia stepped forward, her heart filled with a mixture of awe and fear. "Zorian, if you do this, you'll be risking everything." Zorian nodded, his expression solemn. "It's the only way. Ilara is trying to bend time to her will, but she doesn't understand it the way I do. Time is not a tool to be used. It is a force to be respected. I will stop her, but I must close the rift before she destroys everything." Thorn stepped forward, his jaw clenched. "Do it. We'll hold off the rest." With a final glance at them, Zorian turned his attention to the rift, his hands outstretched. The power inside him surged, and the entire facility seemed to pulse with the energy of time itself. The air hummed and the walls vibrated as Zorian's blood worked its magic. The rift began to close slowly, its edges flickering like the dying embers of a fire. But as the rift began to collapse, Ilara's voice echoed through the facility, cold and mocking. "You think you can stop me?" she sneered. "You're just a man. Your power will never be enough." Zorian's expression hardened, and with a final surge of energy, he slammed his palms together, forcing the rift to close completely. For a moment, everything was still. The enforcers remained frozen, and the air seemed to calm. But Ilara's laughter still rang in their ears. The battle wasn't over. It had only just begun. The silence in the temporal research complex was deafening, a heavy weight hanging in the air after Zorian's powerful act of sealing the rift. The flickering light of the facility had stilled, and for a brief moment it seemed as if time itself had come to a halt. The enforcers, frozen in place by Zorian's raw, unrestrained power, stood motionless. Their weapons hung limply at their sides, and the ominous hum of the rift had ceased. But Zorian wasn't finished. His breath was heavy, his body trembling with the exertion of the force he had just unleashed. Sweat dotted his forehead, his fingers curling as if they were trying to hold on to something that was slipping through his grasp. It was as though the power that had surged through him wasn't just a tool anymore. It was a part of him, something elemental, something deep within his very being. Zorian staggered slightly, his legs nearly buckling beneath him. Thorn stepped forward quickly, catching him by the arm. "Easy, Zorian," Thorn said, his voice laced with concern. "You're pushing yourself too far." But Zorian's eyes were wide, staring straight ahead, unblinking. There was something different in them now, a flicker of understanding that hadn't been there before. His gaze was distant, as though he were seeing beyond the walls of the complex, beyond time itself. Zorian began, his voice hoarse. "I didn't know. I never realized what my blood could do. It's not just time, not just healing. It's more than that. It's the key, the bridge between realities, between everything. All this time I thought I was just a man, just human. But I'm not. I'm something more." Nadia felt a shiver run down her spine. There was a weight in his words, a truth he was only just coming to terms with. The magnitude of what Zorian was saying dawned on her. He wasn't merely a weapon, a person with the ability to control time. He was the conduit through which the universe could be reshaped. His blood wasn't just a tool to alter time, it was the very essence of existence itself. Zorian's hand trembled as he reached for a control panel, his fingers brushing against it lightly. As he did, a strange energy radiated from his skin, and the panel sparked with a life of its own. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing streams of data, complex, incomprehensible equations that danced across the screen. But one thing was clear: the power he held was beyond anything the facility's researchers had ever comprehended. "I'm a part of this," Zorian continued, almost as if he were speaking to himself. "I'm part of the very fabric of time, of life itself. It's in my blood in every cell. Humanity." His voice trailed off, but the realization was there, heavy and undeniable. Humanity is the missing link. We are the ones who are meant to understand this. The universe. It's all connected through us. Nadia took a step closer, her mind racing with the implications of what Zorian was saying. His blood, his essence, was more than just a powerful anomaly. It was the force that held the universe together, the hidden core that bound all of existence. She had always known there was something special about him, but she hadn't understood just how deep it ran. "You're saying humanity." Nadia started, but she couldn't finish her sentence. The idea was too overwhelming. "We're not just surviving in this universe. We're the key." Zorian nodded, his eyes still distant, as though he were gazing through the very layers of reality. "We're the key to everything," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Our blood, our very essence, is the thread that connects all timelines, all realities. I can feel it now. The power, the knowledge, it's all inside me. And I can change everything. I can reshape the future, the past, the present." Thorn stepped forward, his brow furrowed. "Zorian, you're talking about something dangerous. The power to rewrite reality, to change the very nature of existence?" His voice trailed off as he saw the conflicted look in Zorian's eyes. "I understand," Zorian said quietly. "But this isn't just about power. This is about survival. The Council, Ilara, wants to manipulate time for their own gain. But they don't understand it, don't understand the force they're toying with. Time isn't just a thing to control. It's alive. It's sentient. And it chose us. It chose humanity to be its caretakers." Nadia was silent, her mind racing as she absorbed his words. The magnitude of what Zorian was suggesting, the power, the responsibility, was almost too much to bear. Zorian wasn't just a victim of circumstance. He was the embodiment of humanity's potential. His blood, his very existence, could change the course of the universe. He was no longer just a man, he was a force of nature. "We can stop Ilara," Zorian said, his voice growing stronger. "We can stop the Council. But I need to understand this power more fully. I need to connect with it. There's so much I still don't know." Thorn's eyes softened as he looked at Zorian. "We'll help you, Zorian. We'll figure this out together. But we don't have much time. Ilara will be coming for us." Zorian nodded, his eyes narrowing with a newfound resolve. "I know. And this time she won't win." As Zorian closed his eyes, a strange aura seemed to surround him, his body glowing with an ethereal light. Nadia watched in awe as he reached out his hand, gently touching the control panel once more. The holographic streams of data flickered, shifting into a new pattern, one that seemed to pulse with life, as if the very universe were responding to his touch. Zorian's blood, the key to unlocking the true potential of time, was now more than just a source of power. It was a catalyst for understanding the fabric of existence itself. He was becoming something beyond human, something more, something that could control the flow of time and bend it to his will. And with this power, Nadia realized Zorian wasn't just fighting for the survival of humanity. He was fighting to preserve the very essence of life, to ensure that the universe didn't fall into chaos. As the light surrounding him dimmed, Zorian opened his eyes, meeting Nadia's gaze with a look of fierce determination. "We can't just stop Ilara. We have to stop everything she represents, everything that threatens the balance of time. If we fail, the consequences will be unimaginable." Nadia nodded, her resolve hardening. "Then let's make sure we don't fail." Together they would face the battle ahead, not just for survival, but for the very future of the universe itself. Zorian had discovered the true depth of his power, and with it, humanity's potential to reshape the course of time. Now they just had to make sure it wasn't too late. The temporal research complex had descended into chaos. The entire facility trembled as the rift began to pulse. With a dark, malevolent energy, Ilara's forces were closing in. Nadia, Thorn, and Zorian had just barely managed to hold their ground against the enforcers. But they knew deep down that their time was running out. The rift was still unstable, and every second they spent in this collapsing reality drew them closer to total annihilation. The research facility, once a beacon of scientific discovery, had now become a battlefield. The corridors were alive with the sound of gunfire, the hum of energy blasts, and the distant shriek of metal being torn apart. Nadia's pulse raced as she sprinted alongside Zorian, her mind focused on one thing: the end of this war. They had to reach the control room. They had to stop the rift before Ilara, with her twisted understanding of time, tore the universe apart. Zorian's eyes were glowing with an otherworldly light, the power of his blood coursing through him like never before. The more he used his abilities, the more attuned to time he became. He could feel it, the timelines shifting, reality warping under Alara's influence. He was humanity's last hope. But that power came at a cost. Behind them, Thorn ran with a grim determination, his gaze fixed on the door ahead. "We're almost there," he said, his voice strained but steady. "Keep moving." Suddenly, the door to the central chamber slid open with a hiss, revealing a vast cavernous room filled with glowing consoles and shifting holographic displays. The room was a dizzying spectacle of temporal energy, ribbons of light streaming across the space, warping and twisting the very air around them. At the far end of the chamber stood Alara. Her figure shimmered in and out of focus, her presence a distortion of time itself. She was standing tall, the shadows around her writhing like living things. She smiled a cruel, knowing smile as she turned to face them. "Did you really think you could stop me?" Alara's voice echoed through the room, carrying the weight of 1,000 timelines. "You are nothing but ants scurrying to prevent what is inevitable." Nadia felt the hairs on the back of her neck rise. There was a coldness in Alara's tone, an arrogance that made her blood boil. She had been playing with time, bending it to her will, and now she was about to destroy everything they held dear. Zorian stepped forward, his hand raised. "We're not here to stop you," he said, his voice powerful, unwavering. "We're here to take back what's ours." Alara's laugh was like the sound of cracking glass, sharp and menacing. "You think you can change time," she sneered. "You can't even understand it. Your blood, your power is nothing. You are only delaying the inevitable." Zorian's eyes glowed brighter. "No," he said simply, his voice steady. "You are the one who doesn't understand. Time isn't a tool to be wielded. It's a living, breathing thing, and humanity will protect it." Before Alara could respond, the room trembled again, this time more violently. The rift, Alara's rift, was destabilizing, threatening to swallow the entire facility. "This is it," Thorn said, his voice hard as he stepped forward. "We don't have much time. We have to stop her now." Suddenly, a sharp, searing pain shot through Nadia's side. She gasped and stumbled, turning to see Thorn clutching his chest, blood seeping through his fingers. "Thorn!" Nadia shouted, rushing to his side. "I'm fine." Thorn grunted, but the blood pouring from his wound told a different story. "Get to Zorian. He's the only one who can end this." Nadia's heart tightened as she looked at Thorn. "No, Thorn, you can't." He grabbed her arm, his grip firm despite the pain. "You have to stop her. It's the only way. You and Zorian, you're the future. You're the key." Before she could protest, Thorn pushed her away, his face hardening with resolve. "Go. I'll hold them off." As Nadia and Zorian rushed toward the rift's control panel, Alara's forces emerged from the shadows. But Thorn didn't hesitate. He drew his weapon, firing with precision, taking down several of the enforcers with calculated shots. The rest hesitated, momentarily distracted by Thorn's relentless assault. "Go!" Thorn shouted, his voice filled with both desperation and determination. "I won't let you down." Zorian's hand shot out, his powers surging through the room. Time bent to his will as he opened a temporal rift just wide enough to contain the swirling chaos of the collapsing rift that threatened to consume everything. But it wasn't enough. The rift was unstable, and Alara was already shifting it further out of their control. "Zorian!" Nadia shouted, turning toward him. "It's collapsing. You have to close it now." Zorian, his face contorted with the effort, nodded grimly. He stepped toward the heart of the rift, his body shaking with the effort of controlling the power within him. The walls of the room trembled as if the universe itself was protesting. Alara, sensing her imminent defeat, reached out with a snarl, her power growing as she tried to tear Zorian's control from him. "You think you can fight me?" she spat. "I am the future. I am the past. I am everything." But Zorian, with every ounce of strength he had left, pushed back. His blood pulsed with energy, his hands glowing with the raw power of time. He extended his hands toward the rift, his voice a low growl. "No, this is where it ends." The rift screamed, its edges writhing as it collapsed in on itself, its energy being absorbed by Zorian's will. Nadia stood back, watching as the rift imploded, the very fabric of reality twisting and folding in on itself like a dying star. And then in one final burst of light, the rift was gone. Silence fell. But as Nadia turned back toward Thorn, she saw the look in his eyes, pained, but filled with a strange sense of peace. He had held them off long enough for them to stop Alara. But at what cost, Thorn? Nadia whispered, her heart breaking as she rushed to his side. Thorn's hand trembled as he reached up to touch her cheek, his smile faint but genuine. I did what I had to do, he said quietly. I knew this was the only way to make sure you and Zorian could stop her. Nadia could feel the tears welling up in her eyes, but she couldn't let them fall, not yet. Not when the universe itself had been saved. She took Thorn's hand, holding it tightly as she whispered, You didn't just save us, Thorn. You saved everything. With one last weary breath, Thorn's eyes closed and the battle for time was over. But the war was far from finished. The silence in the aftermath of the battle felt oppressive. The rift was gone, closed by Zorian's immense power, but the victory came at a terrible cost. Thorn's sacrifice hung heavy in the air, his last words etched into Nadia's mind, reminding her of the fragile thread they were all hanging on. He had given everything, and now it was up to her and Zorian to see this through to the end. Nadia stood at Thorn's side, her hand still gripping his, her heart aching with the loss of a man who had given his life so that others could live. But even in the face of such heartbreak, she knew there was no time to grieve. There was a mission still to complete. Zorian stood apart from them, his body trembling, his face pale. The immense power he had unleashed in the final moments of the battle had taken everything from him. He was a man, yes, but he was also something more, something beyond human. His blood, his very essence, had merged with the force of time itself, allowing him to reshape reality. But now, standing in the center of the ruined research complex, he seemed as fragile as anyone else. Nadia stepped forward, her voice soft but filled with determination. Zorian, we've done it. The rift is closed. Zorian turned to face her, his eyes dark and hollow as though the weight of what he had done had left him hollowed out. He looked exhausted, far beyond the physical toll of the battle. But there was something else there, a flicker of understanding, of awareness deep in his eyes. He shook his head slowly, his voice barely audible. It's not over. Not yet. I've closed the rift, but that doesn't mean the damage isn't done. I can feel it, Nadia. The timelines. They've been distorted, twisted. The universe isn't whole anymore. Nadia's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean we stopped Alara? We stopped the council. You've done more than anyone could ever ask of you, Zorian interrupted, his voice gaining strength. But the work isn't finished. Time itself, it's fractured, and I can feel it. Every moment we've experienced, the past, the present, and the future, they've all been touched by the chaos that Alara and the council caused. Time is no longer linear. It's a patchwork of realities, each one fighting to stay intact. Zorian looked down at his hands, the glow of his blood still faintly visible under his skin, as though the power inside him was never truly gone. He breathed deeply, as if gathering strength from the very air around him. The very act of acknowledging the damage seemed to draw something from deep within him. I don't know how long I can keep this up. He continued, his voice steady, but tinged with something close to sorrow. The more I use this power, the more I feel myself slipping away. It's like I'm not even human anymore. Nadia could see it in his eyes. He wasn't just struggling with the power within him. He was struggling with what he had become. He was not just Zorian anymore. He was a part of something much bigger, something far beyond the limits of humanity. But then, in the midst of his self-doubt, Zorian did something that made Nadia pause. He closed his eyes and took a deep, steadying breath. When he opened them again, there was something new in his gaze, something different, something that seemed like a resolve, one forged in the fires of everything he had endured. I've seen the future, Zorian said, his voice stronger now, a hint of resolve returning. I've seen what humanity is capable of. We're not just survivors. We're the architects of time. I've been blind to it, but now I see it. I see what we can do, what we will do. Nadia's heart lifted at his words. She had always believed in humanity's resilience, in their ability to adapt, to overcome the impossible. But hearing Zorian say it, hearing him finally understand the power of humanity, the strength they possessed, made everything feel possible again. Zorian turned to face the ruined complex, the remnants of Alara's twisted influence, lingering like a stain on the fabric of time. I was meant to be the key. But now I know that the key isn't just in me, it's in all of us. The power to shape time, to restore balance, to heal what has been broken. It's in humanity. Nadia stepped closer, placing a hand gently on his shoulder. You're not alone in this, Zorian. We'll fix it. Together. A faint smile tugged at the corners of Zorian's lips, though it was tired and worn. He turned to face her, meeting her eyes. Together we can do anything. And with that, something shifted in him. The energy in the air seemed to change, become lighter, more hopeful. The weight that had been pressing down on him began to lift, and he stood taller, more certain of himself than he had ever been. He was no longer just the broken man who had learned of his powers through pain and confusion. He had become the embodiment of humanity's strength, a force of rebirth, of hope, and of endless possibility. Zorian took a deep breath, and the glow in his veins brightened as though the power that had once overwhelmed him was now his to command. His blood, once a curse, had become his gift, the catalyst for the rebirth of time itself. I know what I must do now, Zorian said, his voice firm. Time isn't something we should fear. It's something we must nurture. We're the ones who can restore the balance. Nadia and Zorian moved to the center of the facility, where the temporal consoles flickered with dying light. Zorian placed his hands on the control panel, his fingers steady, despite the power coursing through him. The very air seemed to pulse as the energy from his blood activated the system. The walls trembled and the facility's lights flickered as time itself began to heal. Zorian was rebuilding the fabric of existence, restoring the fractured timelines that Alara's actions had shattered. As the rift began to close completely, Nadia stood by Zorian's side, watching as the reality around them began to settle back into its natural rhythm. The chaos that had once reigned was now being replaced by peace, a delicate peace, but peace nonetheless. Zorian's face was calm now, his eyes filled with a sense of purpose. His power, once a burden, had now become his strength, and he was using it to restore what had been lost. He was no longer just the instrument of change. He was the symbol of humanity's unyielding will to survive, adapt, and rebuild. I may not know what the future holds, Zorian said softly, his voice full of quiet strength. But I know this humanity's potential is limitless. We are not just survivors. We are the ones who will shape the future. With that, Zorian finally felt the weight of his power settle into something more manageable, something that had become a part of him, not a force that controlled him. The power that had once consumed him was now a tool he could wield, a symbol of humanity's resilience and rebirth. Together they would rebuild, and this time they would be ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. The victory over Alara had been hard won, but there was no time to celebrate. The rift had been sealed, and for a brief moment there was a fragile peace, the air thick with exhaustion. Nadia stood beside Zorian in the aftermath, her body sore from the battle, her mind reeling with the loss of Thorn, the man who had fought alongside them and ultimately sacrificed himself to ensure their survival. Zorian, though weakened from his use of the temporal powers, still stood tall, his eyes focused on the horizon. The rift had been closed, and Alara's forces were no longer a threat, but the war was far from over. As the hum of the facility's systems slowly died down, a new and far darker presence made itself known. Can you feel that? Nadia asked, her voice strained. Zorian nodded, his expression grim. They're here. The Ankar. Nadia's heart sank. The Ankar, the ruthless alien race that had plagued countless civilizations, driven by a desire to conquer and control the very fabric of time. They were more dangerous than Alara had ever been, and they had the firepower to back up their ambitions. The ground beneath them trembled as massive ships descended from the heavens, their engines roaring through the atmosphere, sending a shockwave that rattled the building's foundations. The dark silhouette of the Ankar fleet blotted out the stars above their jagged forms, sharp and intimidating against the night sky. Zorian's eyes narrowed. They've come for me, for my blood, for my power. Before they could react, the heavy doors to the complex slammed open, and the Ankar forces poured into the facility. The first wave of soldiers, towering and covered in black metallic armor, advanced their weapons, crackling with deadly energy. These were not mere foot soldiers. They were the elite of the Ankar army, genetically engineered for one purpose: conquest. Nadia quickly scanned the room. They were vastly outnumbered, and there was no time to waste. We have to stop them, she said, her voice filled with resolve. Zorian stepped forward, his hands trembling as he raised them to conjure a temporal barrier. But the toll of the previous battle had drained him. He was too weak to hold them back for long. "They're too strong," Zorian muttered, his voice strained. "I can't hold them off for long. You need to go." "No," Nadia said sharply, shaking her head. "We fight together. You're not doing this alone." But Zorian's eyes darkened, the weight of their situation pressing down on him. "I don't have a choice. If they get to me, if they get my blood, they'll control all of time. The universe will be theirs. I can't let that happen. Go. Protect the timeline." Nadia's breath hitched. She had always known Zorian's blood carried unimaginable power, the ability to rewrite reality itself. But hearing him say it out loud, the finality in his voice, made her realize the true stakes. Time itself was in their hands. "I'll be back," she promised, her voice steady despite the surge of emotion rising in her chest. "We'll stop them together." As Zorian summoned the last of his strength to create a temporal barrier, Nadia rushed to the control panel, the weight of the task ahead sinking in. They had to protect the timeline, or everything they had fought for would be lost. Suddenly, a chilling mechanical voice filled the air, cutting through the chaos. "Zorian!" It said, its tone cold and commanding. "You are the key to our victory. You will not stand in our way." From the shadows, the Ankar leader emerged, tall, armored, and covered in jagged spines. His helmet was adorned with glowing runes, a symbol of his rank within the Ankar hierarchy. His eyes glowing with an unnatural light locked onto Zorian. "You think you can stop us?" the leader sneered. "You and your pitiful species have no idea what you are dealing with. Time is ours to command. Your blood is the final piece of the puzzle, and once we have it, the universe will be ours to rewrite." Zorian's gaze hardened, but his energy was fading fast. "You don't understand. Time isn't something to be controlled. It's a force, something beyond your comprehension, and you will never control it." The Ankar leader raised his weapon, a massive energy blade crackling with dark energy. "We will see about that." With a roar, the Ankar forces charged forward, their weapons firing. Nadia dove to the side, narrowly avoiding an incoming blast. She returned fire, striking down one of the soldiers, but the rest kept advancing undeterred. Zorian, his body trembling, raised his hands again, creating a ripple of temporal energy that slowed the advancing soldiers, freezing them in place for a moment. But the barrier flickered, weakening. The Ankar leader stepped forward, his blade glowing with malevolent power, determined to breach Zorian's defenses. "I won't let you take him!" Nadia shouted, her voice fierce. She ran toward Zorian, her gun blazing, as she cut down another Ankar soldier. But Zorian's power was fading. He couldn't hold them back for much longer. "You need to go!" Zorian gasped, his energy all but spent. "You have to stop them. You're the only one who can." But just as Nadia was about to respond, the Ankar leader lunged forward, his blade cutting through the air. The temporal barrier shattered, and Zorian was struck, the force of the blow sending him crashing to the ground. "No!" Nadia screamed, rushing to his side. Blood poured from Zorian's side where the blade had struck. His eyes were clouded with pain, but he managed a weak smile. It's too late for me," Zorian said softly, his voice barely a whisper. "But not for you. You have to finish this. You have to protect the timeline." Nadia's heart broke as she realized the truth. Zorian had sacrificed everything, but it wasn't over. They still had a chance if they could hold the line. If they could defeat the Ankar and protect the timeline, humanity's future would remain intact. With the last of his strength, Zorian reached up, gripping her hand. "Humanity will never be slaves." Nadia wiped the tears from her eyes and nodded. "I promise. We'll protect it." With a final surge of adrenaline, Nadia turned toward the control panel, knowing what she had to do. She had to stop Ankar from rewriting time itself. They would fight until the very end. As the Ankar leader advanced, confident that victory was within his grasp, Nadia prepared for the final push. This was their last chance to protect everything they had fought for. Humanity would not fall, and no matter what, the timeline would be theirs to protect. With one final determined breath, Nadia activated the control system. Temporal energy surged through the complex, rippling outward as she fought to close the rift forever. The Ankar leader's eyes widened in shock as the fabric of time itself began to resist him. The battle was not over, But Nadia knew one thing for certain: humanity would never again be at the mercy of the Ankar. They would rise above, they would fight back, and they would protect the future at all costs. The sound of the war machine's crumbling echoes still reverberated through the ruins of the temporal research complex. The devastation left by the Ankar, the alien invaders, had scarred the facility's walls, but the battlefield had shifted in a new direction. For the first time, the balance of power had tilted not in favor of the invaders, but toward humanity. Zorian stood at the center of the wreckage, the glow from his blood now dimming, his once intense energy beginning to ebb. Nadia stood by his side, their expressions resolute, but it was clear that this victory wasn't just theirs. It was a victory for the human race, for every soul in the universe who had ever dared to dream of a future free from the tyranny of those who thought themselves superior. The Ankar forces had been decimated. Their war machine had been obliterated in a burst of temporal energy, Zorian's final act of defiance against their belief that time, and by extension, the universe, could be manipulated and bent to their will. The battlefield was silent now, save for the hum of the still active technology in the complex, in the distant sound of the stars themselves whispering through the vastness of space. But it was far from over. Zorian's eyes still glowed faintly, his body shaking with the toll that the battle had taken on him. He had done what he could. He had used his power to protect time, to shield humanity from destruction. But as he stood there, the weight of what had happened settled upon him. He had unlocked the power of his blood, his connection to the very essence of time itself. And yet there was still so much to do. The sky outside the complex rippled, and the stars shifted in a way that made Nadia's pulse quicken. The Ankar were not a simple, singular threat. The remnants of their forces were still out there, scattered across the galaxy, waiting for their opportunity to strike again. The question was no longer whether humanity would survive, but whether they would be able to fight for their future, truly fight in a way that changed the very fabric of existence itself. A voice broke through the tension in the air, calm, steady, but filled with a profound sense of certainty. "You've done more than anyone could have expected," Zorian Nadia said, stepping forward. Her voice was tinged with both respect and awe, a recognition of the power that Zorian had tapped into, not just for himself, but for humanity. "You didn't just stop them, you proved something to the universe. You proved that humanity isn't just a victim of fate, but the ones who define it." Zorian met her gaze, his eyes still flickering with the glow of his power. His lips curled into a tired smile. "Humanity isn't just surviving anymore. We're becoming the architects of time itself. The universe doesn't get to decide what we are. We get to decide what it will be." The words struck a chord with Zorian. His power, his blood, had unlocked more than just a physical ability. It had unlocked a new understanding. Humanity was not the weak, insignificant species that others had seen them as. They were the ones who, in the end, could change the very flow of time. And this power, this strength, wasn't just Zorian's, it was theirs, it was his, and it was humanity's. The universe wasn't something they would bend to. It was something they would shape. The Ankar were only the beginning. Zorian continued, his voice growing stronger, more determined with every word. "There are more out there, more forces that will try to control time, to control the very essence of existence. But we will stand against them. We will prove to them that humanity will not be controlled. We are not here just to survive. We are here to thrive, to change the rules, to shape the future." Nadia's eyes were filled with a fire that mirrored Zorian's. "We've been tested, and we've passed. We're the ones who can protect the timeline. We're the ones who can fight for our future." Zorian closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the connection to the very universe beneath his skin. The power of his blood still pulsed a rhythm that resonated through his body, through time itself. It was a force of nature, a force that couldn't be ignored anymore. He understood finally what his role in all of this had been. It wasn't just about stopping Ilara or the Ankar or any other force that threatened the universe. It was about ensuring that humanity had the ability to protect what was theirs, to protect time itself. He opened his eyes, meeting Nadia's gaze with a clarity he had never felt before. "I know what I have to do now. Humanity doesn't just survive through willpower alone. It survives through its resilience, through its capacity to adapt, to rise, to become something greater. We will take our place in the universe not as subjugated beings, but as the force that shapes reality itself. Nadia nodded, feeling the weight of his words settle in her bones. For so long they had fought against forces that seemed impossible to defeat. But now with Zorian's power and the resilience of humanity, they had proven that they could not just survive, they could change the very course of the universe. A distant rumble shook the facility again, and the group turned to see the sky outside flicker once more. The battle was over for now, but the war for the future was just beginning. The Anchor had been defeated, but the universe was vast, and their fight was far from over. Still in the hearts of the humans who stood together in that ruined facility, there was no doubt they were ready. Zorian raised his hands and a surge of temporal energy rippled through the air. Time itself seemed to bend under his touch as he began to rewrite the broken threads to restore balance to what had been torn apart. His power was undeniable, a force that had the potential to reshape the universe. But more than that, humanity now had the will to control it, to become the architects of time, not just its victims. With Zorian at their side and with their collective resolve, they knew one thing for certain: no force, no invader, no enemy would ever again be able to threaten the future of humanity. They were the ones who would decide what came next. The universe would bend to them. The Temporal Research Complex was now a hollow shell of its former grandeur, the aftermath of the battle leaving behind twisted metal, broken glass, and shattered consoles. But amidst the chaos, there was an unmistakable stillness in the air. The rift, once a violent, unpredictable force, was now sealed, its violent pulses reduced to nothing more than the faintest echo of what had come before. The Anchor had been repelled, Ilara's influence had been broken, and the fate of the universe had been altered. Nadia and Zorian stood together in the heart of the ruined facility, the glow of the temporal energy fading from Zorian's veins, his body still trembling slightly from the immense strain of wielding such power. He had saved time itself, but now there was one final choice: to make a decision that would shape the future of the universe and all the timelines that had been torn apart. Zorian turned to Nadia, his face marked with exhaustion, but there was a newfound sense of peace in his expression. The overwhelming power that had once consumed him was now in his control. He had accepted the role that his blood had destined him for, not just as a protector of time, but as a symbol of humanity's potential to change the very fabric of reality. "We've done it, Zorian," Nadia said, her voice a mix of relief and awe. "We've closed the rift. We've stopped Ilara and the Ankar. The universe is safe for now." Zorian nodded, but the weight of the situation still lingered. Safe, yes, but not truly whole. Time has been fractured. Even though the rift is closed, its impact has left scars, deep ones. The flow of time, the balance of the universe, it's still fragile. Nadia's heart tightened as she looked at him. She knew what he was thinking. She could feel it too, the deep, insidious pull of the timelines, the danger of time travel itself. It wasn't just a force that could be controlled. It was a responsibility, a power that humanity could no longer treat recklessly. "We can't keep it open," Nadia said softly, her voice firm with resolve. "We can't let the temptation of time travel continue to risk everything we've fought for. We've seen what happens when it's abused. The universe, the future, it's too fragile. We've already bent it too far." Zorian met her gaze. His eyes filled with both understanding and sorrow. "I know, and I've seen the danger too. My blood, it's the key, but it's also a curse. I've unlocked something that shouldn't have been touched. Time isn't meant to be manipulated so easily. Humanity, we can't wield this power without consequences." Nadia's heart ached, but she knew he was right. They had been given a gift, one that could reshape the universe, but also one that could destroy it. The power to change time was too great, too dangerous to leave unchecked. They couldn't risk losing themselves to the very thing that had made them stronger. "We have to close it. For good," Nadia said, her voice steady. "We've proven that humanity can stand against any force, that we can rise above the chaos and shape the future. But we can't let our ambition destroy what we've built. The timelines, the fabric of time, it needs to be protected. Not manipulated, not controlled, protected." Zorian stood in silence, his hands trembling slightly as he looked at the machinery surrounding them, the very devices that had once harnessed the power to control time, the power to reshape the universe. It was still there within him, within the very structure of the complex. But he knew what had to be done. With a quiet breath, Zorian stepped forward to the heart of the temporal control panel. His hand hovered over the activation switch, an ancient piece of technology that had been created to open the door to the infinite possibilities of time. The very power that had almost destroyed them all, the power that was now theirs to close forever. Nadia stepped beside him, her gaze fixed on the console. "You know this is the only way, Zorian." "I know," he said, his voice almost a whisper. "But I didn't realize until now that this power was never meant to be ours. It was never meant to be wielded by any species, not even humanity. We were meant to protect it, not bend it to our will." He took a deep breath, the weight of his decision settling in his chest. His hand moved to the console, and with a final decisive motion, he pushed the button that would seal the temporal portal for good. The air around them hummed with energy as the system powered down, the light of the temporal field dimming until it was nothing more than a distant memory. Zorian stepped back, his body sagging with the effort of what he had just done. The force of the decision had drained him, but there was no regret in his eyes, only a sense of peace. "It's done," he said softly. Nadia placed a hand on his shoulder, her voice low but filled with conviction. "We've saved the universe. We've proved that humanity is not only capable of surviving, it's capable of thriving, of shaping its own future. We will never be controlled. We will never be enslaved by those who think they can manipulate us. The power to change the universe is no longer in the hands of the few. It's in ours, and we will protect it." Zorian looked at her, his eyes filled with a quiet pride. "We've done more than survive. We've shown the universe what humanity is truly capable of." As the temporal research complex fell silent around them, the world outside began to shift its future, no longer uncertain, its timelines no longer at the mercy of those who would use them for power. The universe, though vast and unyielding, had learned a lesson. Humanity was not to be underestimated. It was a force of nature, a force that would fight for its future, for its place in the universe. And as Nadia, Zorian, and the remnants of their team stood together, watching the last traces of the temporal energy fade, they knew one thing for certain: humanity would never again be at the mercy of the stars. The universe was theirs to protect, and they would defend it with every ounce of strength they had. No longer bound by the constraints of time, they would face the future as masters of their own destiny, and the universe would never forget the power of humanity. After the fierce battle, when the last invaders retreated, the world fell silent. The world had changed, but not in the way the enemies had expected. Humanity has not only protected the timeline, but also proven that they don't just exist, they have the power to change the universe. They fought to defend their freedom and control over their own future, overcoming every challenge the cosmos threw at them. Thorn had sacrificed himself, and it was in that most painful moment that Nadia and the rest of the group realized humanity's strength wasn't just in their ability to fight or survive. Their true power came from their will, from an indomitable resilience that would never yield. It was this perseverance that helped them defeat those who sought to manipulate and control time, protecting the universe from devastation. Humanity, in all its greatness and humility, had proven that in a world teeming with dark forces, they were the masters of their own destiny. What they achieved was no accident, but the result of relentless struggle, of holding firm to their belief in themselves, in freedom, and in progress. This universe was no longer a place for invasion. It belonged to those who dared to protect it, and humanity through this trial had proven that they would never be subjugated.